This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on the Church of the Government. Get on. Welcome to the best 15 minutes or so in the universe. It's Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus. Where are you, Mark?
San Jose. Just appeared in court for Cain Velasquez and came over to the FBO. I'm going to do reasonable doubt and fly out of here.
What could you tell us about the Cain case?
We put it over till May 6th. We're going to make another pitch for bail. I think we've got some compelling reasons. I can tell you that there's something, there's two different things that are happening. His wife has now filed a lawsuit against the daycare center as what's called a guardian ad litem, and she has named not only the person who was arrested, but also the mother and the stepfather as defendants in the case. And I think that there'll be some other breaking news on this case either now or by the time we come back and ask that he be released. It's becoming apparent that there's more to this case, or as Cain said today in his posting, that the truth is starting to unravel here.
Do you say May 6th is when that case is set for?
Yep. Coming back May 6th. We may do it a day or two earlier, but May 6th is what it's presently set for, and to basically a couple of weeks.
All right. You want to talk Gretchen Whitmer case?
I think I do, because once again, now that you have your own legal podcast or have for the last 8 years, you've kind of been early money on some of these cases, haven't you? You can take a victory lap on this one.
Well, look, here's all I do is when I feel like one side is pushing beyond the nuts and the bolts of the case into some sort of realm that sort of borders on hyperbole, then I get suspicious. Like, why are you pushing so hard? Why don't we just give us the facts and give us the nuts and the bolts? And I felt on this one early that they were pushing way too hard. You know, whenever they do this is a Trump-inspired, insurrection, that it's worst day since Pearl Harbor. When I start hearing the hyperbole, I go, wait a minute, what's really going on here? When they just go sort of nuts and bolts, I don't have that impulse or that instinct. And the Gretchen Whitmer one, they were, Biden was campaigning on it. This is Trump. This wouldn't happen if I was in office. And they did way too much sort of hyperbole and connected it to Trump. And Gretchen Whitmer was out sort of campaigning on it. And I thought, this feels like some smoke and hokum here.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because my theory has been the reaction. I've kind of been the yin to your yang. You're the early warning system, the canary in the coal mine. I'm the one who likes to watch the aftermath, because the aftermath never ceases to amaze me, whether it was Rittenhouse or what people were saying afterwards. And Gary, do you have some of the commentary afterwards? Because to me, it's stunning in a constitutional democracy. Watch some of this.
Well, So just to be clear, I guess there were 4 defendants. 2 of them were acquitted. 2 of them were hung. And
right. And let me mention something about that, because you're going to hear, I'll set the table for this. 2 of them were hung. 2 were acquitted. And there were commentators who were actually out there saying, lawyers who were saying, well, it could have just been one juror that, wasn't convinced. And no. There were 4 people on trial, 2 of whom were acquitted. So don't tell me this was an outlier. And by the way, this was in federal court, where the chances of acquittal are about 1 out of 100. So even at that. So take a listen to some of this.
I will. And I will also set the table by saying, I think the problem that we're seeing over and over in the news cycle is you create something that is different than what it is. So you go Kyle Rittenhouse. You go, what happened? That guy had his mom drive him across the state line with his M16, dropped him off at a Black Lives Matter rally, and it was open season. He just went hunting. So you go, okay, that's the theme. Later on, when he's found innocent, of course you're outraged because you're still stuck on your theme, but your theme doesn't mirror the facts. The jury hears the facts. You have this alternative universe where this guy just got his M16 and went out hunting people. And of course, if that's the universe you're living in, then of course you're outraged when the result doesn't mirror the crime, but it was the crime you concocted in your head, you idiot. The jury hears the actual crime, and that's where there's a convergence. That's where there's a problem, because now you got one thing in your head, and the jury's got another thing in their head. But I would argue the jury has the facts in their head. And they did the same.
And they're instructed, right? And they're instructed, a jury is instructed that you are only get evidence that's presented either from the witness stand or by stipulation in the four corners of the courtroom. And watch what happens here, because to me it is it's embarrassing.
All right, so
I won't go farther.
Let's see. Well, this is someone from CNBC.
This is someone filling in for Shepard Smith on the news with Shepard Smith.
Okay.
A jury in Michigan did not convict any of the 4 suspects on trial in an alleged plot to kidnap the state's governor. The jury announcing the shocking verdicts after days of deliberations. They say they found the 2 of the men not guilty on all charges. They were deadlocked on verdicts for the other 2, Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. Now prosecutors can put those 2 on trial again. They argued the men scouted the governor's summer home and tested explosives. They say they were angry at the Democratic governor over her COVID policies, but defense attorneys argued they never actually planned to kidnap her. They painted the men as stoners who were all talk. A spokesperson for the governor responded to the decisions today, saying in part, there must be accountability and consequences for those who commit heinous crimes. Without accountability, extremists will be emboldened. Barbara McQuaid joins me now, law professor.
Let's pause for 1 second. What is accountability? Does accountability mean you must convict? Because there was accountability. The accountability here, by the way, was not guilty verdicts for 2 of the defendants and a hung jury, which, by the way, is just as valid as a guilty or a not guilty. So there was accountability, which, this, when people say we want accountability, it's the same thing as when they say we want justice. Well, does justice mean you get a conviction, or does justice mean the jury does its job? Anyway, now we're going to hear from a former federal prosecutor.
All right.
University of Michigan and NBC News legal analyst and former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. Barbara, thanks. Could a retrial for those 2 men look any different?
That's a really interesting question, Kelly, and I think that's the one that prosecutors are going to have to assess for themselves. And it may be that we find out a little more about this verdict. Was it one holdout juror who just didn't like the case and nullified the law? Or did a group of jurors have a problem with this case? But I think it would be very difficult to
time out.
Time out.
Wait, a group of jurors? Yeah, 12 jurors unanimously found 2 of them not guilty. It wasn't one juror trying to nullify the law. How does an ex-U.S. attorney, or the U.S. attorney for that jurisdiction, get on TV and just spout that nonsense?
Well, that's why they let her back on for the next case. That's how it works. You have a little more, Gary?
You just announced. You just announced you're the reporter. You just announced 2 of the people were acquitted. Last time I looked, in order to acquit somebody, it requires 12 jurors, and now you're gonna bloviate that maybe it was one juror or a group of jurors who wanted to nullify. Really? That's where we're at.
Here's the rest.
Case go, as you just read in that statement from the governor's office, I think we are seeing violent extremism on the rise, particularly anti-government violent extremism. And I think to just let this go would embolden others who might be watching and feel like it's open season on elected officials.
Open season on elected officials.
Yeah, it should be open season on a prosecutor who brought a case that was met with
all near hysteria and ended up in not guilties for 2 out of the 4 defendants in federal court, where, by the way, did I already mention they've got a conviction rate that's in excess of 98% or 99%. So
the idea that somehow, and this is part of what the symbiotic relationship between the media and the criminal justice system, they get on former federal prosecutors. And I love it. At least this was a federal case. I mean, at least this was her jurisdiction. Normally, they'd have a former federal prosecutor opining on a state criminal action when they haven't even stepped foot in a state court. But here you're going to opine and just put out nonsense about holding people accountable. They went through a jury trial. The jurors listened to the evidence. The jurors were instructed. The jurors came back with not guilty verdicts, and they were hung on the other. You should be saying the jury system works. We didn't get hoodwinked.
Well, look, the new world order is Derek Chauvin, the cop, was charged and convicted on murder charges, and the system worked. Kyle Rittenhouse, you didn't like. He was set free. The system didn't. The system did work with Chauvin, didn't work with Kyle Rittenhouse, didn't work with these people. You're not allowed to just pick and choose themes that you enjoy and then assign whether the system worked or not. The system is the system. In the process of a system working, sometimes people aren't convicted of shit you think they did.
Right. And that's, by the way, why even have a system if they're going to push back every time it works? It works when there's a not guilty. That means somebody was acquitted. That means that they applied the law to the facts. It wasn't one person holding out. It was a group of jurors unanimously finding that the government did not prove their case.
Well, also, you must be able to let go of your previous assertions. Like, okay, it's a group of white militia guys who are going to abduct and murder the governor. Right. But that may not have been what actually happened. And you have to understand going into your job that things change, and you're keeping your previous assumption. And with that previous assumption, again, if Kyle Rittenhouse mom drove him across state lines with a gun, then yes, he should have been convicted, except for that didn't happen. And you're clinging to your previous assumption, which I don't even know at this point whether they know it or not.
Right. There's the lack of awareness. That's why I say, this was not, this was Shepard Smith, even though it wasn't Shepard Smith on that show. It was supposedly a straight ahead news reporting on the criminal justice system. And they go from the sublime to the ridiculous in less than 45 seconds.
Well, Mark, we're about out of time. Audio's a little choppy, so we'll wrap this one up a couple of seconds early. I will say I stayed at the V Hotel in Palm Springs. I want to give it a plug. I had a wonderful time there. It's a beautiful facility. If anyone's in the neighborhood, and Gigi's Restaurant, went in there, got a cup of coffee on Saturday morning. The bartender was bad-mouthing an employee who was late, and I said Mark would love this, because he was talking shit about a guy who was supposed to be there at 9, and it was 9:20, and he wasn't there yet. And the bartender was not in a good mood about it, which, again,
we'll give that guy a raise.
Give him a raise. He's doing the work of two. You can go to AdamCarolla.com for all the live shows. Mark, you got a plug?
If you're in New York, stop by Prova, Grand Central Terminal. They're really making a comeback, and it's something great to see. If you're in Times Square, go by. We just relaunched the parlor there as Love Pizza, so stop by, buy a slice.
All right, good luck with Cain. We'll talk to you soon when you get back to California. Until next time, or back to LA, I should say. Next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.